Hello there, everybody, and this is the second part of my Marvel Legends figure showcase. No need to waste any more time. Let's get to it. Now let's get to my Captain America figs, which I have two of. Probably starting off with the comic version, because, well, obviously. So yeah, this is the comic book Captain America that I got, which came in the latest Gamerverse line. Gotta say, I really like what they done with the fig here, especially with it being a more comic booky version of the character. You know, the bright blue, the reds and whites. You know, really brings out that American pride. Something I feel like some of the later MCU suits kind of fail at to an extent, but I'm getting a little off topic. So, yeah. I especially like how they did with the shield here, being able to easily just snap it on, and also having this small plug, which I just realized is a thing, so that you can have it, so if you don't want the shield out, you can just pop it right in to the back, you know? Pretty clever how they designed it. So yeah. Anyways, when it comes to this guy, he also has both a spare head sculpt, though I will say I am a little disappointed that we don't have a face sculpt, but the same, like just the normal head without the mask, but that's neither here nor there. We also come with these two, hand, thumbs up hands, which I'm sure are for a victory pose, but I'm not sure which one specifically. And we have this special effect for his shield bash, which is pretty cool. So yeah, this is a pretty stacked figure. Can't complain. Now with the MCU figure, aka the one from Endgame. Honestly, comparing this to the comic one, yeah, I obviously compare the comic one more. Especially when it comes to the suit, which I think better represents, like, the American flag, which the original suit was supposed to. You know? Like, especially with some of the colors, like, how they were a bit brighter, like, during the earlier days, but it kind of got muted, like, over time, which kind of lost, like, a meaning. Like, the original American flag's meaning in my eyes. Well, not, like, the original flag meaning, but, like, the original suit's meaning, I meant. Like, what they were trying to do with emulating the flag. Which is something I kind of feel like some of the more tactical look and just how they demuted the colors kind of diminishes that in a way. I mean, it is a pretty accurate rendition of the character. Heck, even comes with this face, like, head mold for Chris Evans so that you can replace the head, though sadly this one is not compatible with the First Steps Human Torch one, which is a shame because that would have basically been like the closest thing we'd get to a Marvel Legends version of Johnny Storm from the original duology, but hey, I digress. I honestly don't know where to put these guys when it comes to these grouping things, so I'm just going to put them all in the whole miscellaneous pile for right now. Especially since these guys are also the only figures I have of each character here. So let's start off with the two I'm actually more excited to get to talk about, which are these two, and then I'll just briefly mention these guys once we're done. Starting things off with the last of the comic book figures I have, specifically the ones that have the mini comic book thing right over here. Yeah, we've got the Infinity Gauntlet Adam Warlock. And I gotta say, this is a pretty good representation of the character from the comic, honestly. And something I am a little disappointed when it comes to Guardians 3 is specifically how they did Adam Warlock, because it seems like they were setting him up to specifically have a role in the Infinity War and Endgame, yet they never did anything with him in those movies yet. So when Guardians of the Galaxy 3 came along, he just kind of had to be there just to fill up a plot line, and he basically didn't really serve much of a role other than just for the lulz, which is kind of disappointing, because I would have loved to have seen what he would have done in those movies. But hey, we can't really change the past. As for what we got here, I like it. I do, and I'm not really the biggest fan of like these plastic capes, as I've told you guys quite a few times in the last video. But other than that, yeah, I personally really like it. And since it comes from the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, it also naturally has this mini Infinity Gauntlet right here, which you can attach to a plethora of other characters. I mostly attach it to my Symbiote Spider-Man fig because it just looks really cool on him, but yeah. You can basically attach it to whoever you want if it fits the body mold. So, and he's also got his staff, which I'm not sure why they didn't have this in Guardians 3, which, it just feels like a part of the character is missing without it. But yeah. Anyways, good fig. Highly would recommend. And now we have my Maximum Series Hulk, and considering how big he is, it's kind of a pain in the butt to try and, actually fit him on this table, because you're not going to be able to see his head. So, yeah. Honestly, from what I've heard, this is a pretty controversial fig, mainly due to its reusage of older parts, which which for like a legacy collector of Hulk, I'm sure this is going to be a bit disappointed, but for like my first figure here, I honestly think it's not too shabby, Although I do really need to get my hands on the Maximum Series Spider-Man figure as well, since, well, I'm obviously more of a Spider-Man fan than a Hulk fan, but hey, I digress. And the amount of accessories he comes with is honestly pretty nuts, such as not only two alternate head sculpts you can switch into, and a couple of extra hands, and also these cool effect things, which I usually don't put on display, but I am glad they're here, because sometimes I will, for even if it's not like the standard. And also this missile that can like be split into two parts for some reason, despite the fact that realistically it would explode, but hey, who am I to judge? So yeah, if this is like your first Hulk fig, I would recommend. Goes well with the collection, and also really well when putting it right next to my classic Captain America and Hulk. Yeah. And now I just need a classic Thor in order to complete the main 4 Avengers. So, yeah. Next up, we got Loki, like classic Loki. I'm not specifically like know which one, like when it came out, but it looks pretty old. Honestly, I got this like a long time ago, and honestly, when it comes to this figure specifically, I honestly don't really care for it that much. He's normally not on my like display place for these guys, and honestly, I'm just not a big fan of like the Loki's like original fit, much preferring some of the more regal and more modern designs, kind of like what he has in the MCU. Obviously, for classic Loki fans, they're more likely to enjoy this figure than I am, but as for me, it's alright. Not sure if this guy specifically is a Marvel Legends or not. He might be in the same boat as like that older thing in Wolverine figure for all I know, but we got comic book Thanos, which is pretty cool. I do like his fit much more than classic Loki. I just normally don't display him, especially without the Infinity Gauntlet, which I, funnily enough, lost, sadly, when I was moving to this place. Also, not that it would honestly, like, matter too much, because I've never been able to put that thing on, which is like a real bummer. And as for the figure itself, it's alright, like Loki, and it'll mostly look better when fighting off against some of the bigger ones, like bigger figures like the Thing or the Hulk. Like, I think it'll much better shine in like when fighting those guys. But on its own, it's really just whatevs. Post yeah, coming back from a trip, Pizza Man here. While I was out today, I also got my hands on the Silver Surfer, which I'm putting in the anomalous section, even though I didn't showcase him like previously with the other four guys, especially since I don't know where else to put him. Though if I have him prior, I'd probably put him there, or like as a Fantastic Four affiliated character, since he is he is great, mostly affiliated with them. So yeah. Anyways, I got this guy back at like the mall over in, yeah, that was like 40 minutes away, and like it's some kind of toy. It seems to be the Toy Biz Marvel Legends one, I think. Which, yeah, I have to say, while he doesn't really stand like as well with the others as say the Silver Surfer from the First Steps movie does, it's still a pretty good figure to have in my collection. I originally thought this was supposed to be the one with the magnetic board because I didn't see the tabs, but you know, it ultimately wasn't that. But I still like this fit. I still like the figure. You know, it's pretty neat. It's pretty neat. You know, just so for a surfer on his board, you know, can really get some. And if nothing else, I can at least get some cool stuff with him. So yeah. Alright, so I was going to do a Spider-Man villains category for this, but I have like a fuck ton of them, so yeah, I'm gonna split it up into a couple parts. Also, I have another character that doesn't really fit into the villain category, so we're instead going to be doing a symbiote category for this one. So let's start off with the very first one I ever got when it came to this group. Alright, starting off with the very first symbiote monster villain I have ever gotten when it came to these figures, it would have to be the Venom Let There Be Carnage, well, Carnage. And while the Sony Cinematic Universe without Spider-Man, despite Spider-Man being a critical part of the villain's like stories, like while that universe was hot garbage, I will say that when it came to adapting like the Venom movies, I think those movies are like the closest thing they have to good and to being like good, even though they didn't have, well, I like the first one at least. The other two are like, Plus, when it comes to like character design stripped from the comics, this is probably like the best adapted design, like the closest one we got. Even though there are some differences, such as with the mouth and such as it being able to have a tongue and like how it works with the teeth, like where they're supposed to be black in the comics, like the whole mouth and face. Yeah, whatever. Anyways, this is probably my my first or second favorite, especially with all the accessories such as these blades that it comes with, the alternate head that gives it a like Carnage-esque grin, and also these extra tendril pieces that I can stick onto the back. So yeah, this is pretty much up there with the this this and the next figure I'm going to be talking about are pretty much tied for like my favorite symbiote figure currently. Alright, now we've got the second symbiote figure I've ever gotten currently, which is the Spider-Man 2 Venom from PS5 Spider-Man 2. So, and while that version of Venom is just like mid at best, he at least did have some really cool moments, and he does really he really looks awesome when it comes to design, and especially the stature, which is just, yeah, like, seriously, dude was pretty intimidating at AF in the entire thing. In the level where you get to play with him, mission where you get to play with him, was just extremely awesome. You know, he had his cool moments, even if as an adaptation of Venom, he's just like mid at best and kind of trash at worst. Basically, well, it shadows Venom, but like a bit more, you know. And also the fact that he does not come with like an attachment for like the Venom wings, like in the final battle, is just a crime. Like, seriously, what were they thinking with that? Though at the end of the day, this is definitely like top 2 figures I've gotten in my collection in terms of a design and stature, and it's definitely like my second, like, neck and neck for whether I consider my favorite symbiote figure, either this or Carnage. My second to last figure I'm going to be showing off for the symbiotes is the Marvel vs. Capcom Venom, which is basically just the Spider-Man Classics Venom, but like painted blue. And yeah, someone's gonna definitely make the meme of, why are you blue? Even though, like, yeah, this is actually a reference to the comics where they would kind of shade him blue, but unlike Miguel O'Hara, where he was originally black, and then, well, they just shaded him blue, and then they just made it look blue arbitrarily, and just kind of stuck. With Venom, it's one of those things that just kind of comes and goes. Like, yeah, he's seen in the comics sometimes as blue, but like most of the time he's seen in black, and the blue is mostly just seen as a recolor, kind of like that cyan blue Venom skin he has in Marvel Rivals that should have been a actually purchasable color palette in that game still, by the way, instead of just being restricted to the closed beta, but I digress. Anyways, this figure still has some pretty good stuff, and it's probably the best posable when it comes to these due to it being a smaller figure. And yeah, coming with this cool Eddie and Venom like half head thing, which is really cool to screw around it with, as well as just some standard fist hands, you know. So yeah, personally, it's just a classic Venom figure, just blue. And if you want the black version, you can just go buy the one, like, just go buy the Spider-Man Classics version, which is basically just this but black and having a different alternate head, which, you know, hey, cool. Also, I do need to get that black version at some point, but as of now, this will work. So yeah. The final symbiote figure here is actually my latest one, being the Agent Anti-Venom figure from the Magic the Gathering line, which is basically this whole thing with collaboration with Marvel Legends and some kind of card game thing, which I have the card for that like right over here, which is pretty neat. Definitely something I'll keep on hand, you know, even if I don't play Magic the Gathering. So yeah, this is kind of like a redo of the Marvel Legends Marvel Legends Spider-Man Classics Agent Venom figure, but they gave it the whole thing to give it like the same back, be able to place the same back tendrils from like the previous one, like a couple years prior to that, which basically kind of makes it the best of both worlds for just of like both versions of Anti-Venom, just with of Agent Venom, just with an Anti-Venom slab of paint over it, which hey, does definitely look cool, even though I do wish it did come with a Flash Thompson head, but I guess I'll just need to sell with this until we have until I have the Agent Venom figure finally in my grasp. Like, and also this is basically the closest thing we're getting to an actual proper version of the Anti-Venom suit from Marvel Spider-Man 2, since like yeah, we did get a figure of that, but it was like the wrong color scheme, like that blue and yellow, like blue and white one, which is like why instead of like the actual like suit style. Seriously, if you're gonna make the black suit like the actual black suit from the game, then like why use the Anti-Venom suit when that suit style doesn't even give off anything from Anti-Venom? Okay, like brief tangent aside. So yeah, this is basically the closest thing I'm getting, and I'm pretty happy with what I've got. It comes with these here's some extra hand molds, and yeah, also the tendril thing, which just looks freaking awesome, you know, especially when you stick it on the back right here. So yeah, this is pretty goated, not gonna lie. Alright, now we're on to the next batch of Spider-Man villains with the Goobers themselves, the Goblin Family Tree, which we have 3 of here. So let's start with the Goober that started it all. Alright, first we're starting off with Green Goblin because he's easily the best one. Some will try and say Hobgoblin, but like, bruh, he's not green, he is irrelevant, like, bruh, you can't compare it to the OG Goblin. Like, he's just Green Hobgoblin in comparison is just Green Goblin from fucking Temu. Anyways, obviously, we got the best goblin over here, aka Norman Osborn, Spidey's arch nemesis, as we all know. He's also the only goblin here who has his who has an alternate head that is Norman Osborn's face, so that works. As well as a pumpkin bomb, which also comes with Hobgoblin, but I got a cheaper one off of the store I went to, which didn't have this, but they're pretty much the same anyways, so it really doesn't matter. And of course, he also has his glider, which is also the best one because I can actually fit his feet into it because of the shoes being able to help with that. Something I can't say for Ripoff Goober over there, but we'll get to him in a second. So yeah, the only real problem I can really say with this figure would probably be like the face kind of looking weird, like how it's with the protruding eyes, but I've gotten used to it. And it does look creepy like the Green Goblin is supposed to be, so, you know, it ends well. Okay, now we got the Hobgoblin, who is basically Green Goblin, but mid. Like, seriously, this is probably the most, when it comes to Spider-Man villains, he's probably the most overrated, honestly. Basically, just, like, if Green Goblin is like Jango Fett, who's like the actually cool one who actually does stuff for the plot, then this is basically the Boba Fett of of the goblins who's kind of just there, you know? He's personally just one I've never been super invested in, and his lack of adaptations doesn't really help him either. Heck, none of them even chose his real name in any of the cartoon shows. In the 90th animated series, they used Jason Masondale, and in the 2017 show, it was Harry Osborn, when in reality in the comics it's actually Roderick Kingsley. Okay, tangent over. So basically, when it comes to the figure itself, it's good. It's a good translation from the comics. Also with a removable, it also comes with a removable cape and hood, which, you know, I'm not complaining about, especially though I personally never would take it off because he looks cursed without that, as I'll show in the figures. But yeah, probably my least favorite goober, honestly. Though I will give him points over my next figure because, unlike him, he does have a glider, though this glider is kind of a pain in the ass to put on, especially since he doesn't have any clips to his feet, so it's very easy for him to just fall off, you know? But kind of yeah, kind of awkward like this, especially when doing it. Yeah. So, yeah, not that big of a fan of the glider. Heck, he doesn't even have that ball thing that the Green Goblin's glider has, so that it could be put on that stand. But sadly, I don't have the No Way Home Green Goblin, so I can't show that via a comparison. Now we got the most hardcore version of these goblins here, which is basically Red Goblin, where basically you take two of Spider-Man's best villains and you just slap them together into this thing, which honestly is pretty cool in concept, even if I hear the storyline that it comes from isn't all that good. Though from what some of the comic panels do show me, it at least seems to be one of those that does have its moments, at least. So yeah, this is the Red Goblin, and he's pretty good when it comes to translation, even if it is a pain in the ass dealing with some of these smaller tendrils. Seriously, can't these just be attachments instead of just molded on and being stupidly fragile? Why? What would with some of these back then? If they were smaller spiky ones, kind of like with my Carnage figure, then it'd be fine, but these are very loose, stringy tendrils that can probably be breaking off relatively easily if you're not careful. So, yeah. Also, this guy does not come with a glider, which is a disappointment. And I also have to knock off points because he's not green, like the Green Goober. Though, then again, they actually did do that with the Dark Goober, which is Dark Goblin in the 2017 show, which is basically just a ripoff, a slightly more built ripoff of the Red Goblin. So, and it also looked fugly in that art style. So, honestly, it's not that big a deal. Alright, now we have the only two villains I have with tuxedos, which there isn't really much to say on these two with both Hammerhead and Tombstone. So I'm just gonna, just cover them both here. I do like how they did with their looks. They are pretty accurate to what they look like in the comics. It's just that there's not really much to go off of, since they're just, wearing different colors of tuxedo. And when it comes to their faces, they're they're basically what you expect for both Tombstone and Hammerhead. Though, if I had to find something that was weird, it would have to be with Hammerhead's, not Hammerhead, Tombstone's head, where he has this whole ball thing going on, which is something none of my other action figures have, and it's the only time I've ever seen it on an action figure, which is kind of weird.
So, yeah. Also, another thing, these things can be a pain in the balls to post sometimes, like with how hard they are. So there's also that. But overall, they are pretty good henchman goons, and when it comes to Tombstone, he's basically the closest thing I have to a crime boss figure until I eventually get my hands on Kingpin at some point.
Alright, we are at the home stretch now, and we're going to be looking at the rest of my Spider-Man villain figures, so no need to waste any time. Let's get to them.
Kraven. Here we go. aka the guy who thinks he can fight Spider-Man when he's just dude who hunts people. Mostly metahumans. Because he thinks he's stronger. So, yeah. Anyways, I do like this figure. You know? Especially since it's the one scene from the animated series, from Spider-Man the animated series from the 90s, even if that Kraven personality-wise isn't really like my favorite, really. Huh, weird. Anywho, when it, I will say that it is kind of weird that his Spider-Man 2, that his version from Spider-Man 2 didn't get a action figure, though, from the Gameverse line, but that's a topic for another character. Anyways, I also thought that this thing was originally just stuck on him, but apparently you can take it off him, as I'll show you in one of the photos with him being, you know, shirtless. So so yeah. So anyway, the only other thing I want to of note is that I wish there was another head mold, maybe of him smirking, you know, because he's always just looking angry at me, like, what did I do to piss him off? So anyways, yeah, here's Kraven for you. Now here we have AK the biggest plagiarist here, the Chameleon, who looks freaking albino. Yep. But again, also based off his 90s animated show appearance, where he's also mute for some reason, or at least I didn't normally hear him talk. Actually, he did. I don't know if he actually did speak, and I just didn't usually hear it, or he was just mute the whole way. But yeah. Anyways, I also kind of wish this guy got extra head sculpts as well, since the only thing we have here is like mask. Though you can swap him out with like some of the other heads, you know, if you have more than just one figure that can attach to this body. So yeah, it's kind of a figure that kind of relies on more for that. Otherwise, this guy is not really that interesting, at least in action figure form. Here we have Spot, who's but black. Yeah, this is like based on his ultimate form he got in like during Across the Spider-Verse, when he just absorbs all that dark matter stuff from the reactor. And we didn't really get to see much of him in Across the Spider-Verse, though we will be able to see him more in Beyond, thankfully. So there's that. And he also comes with this stand here with portals with Morty on there. So there's also that as well. So yeah, pretty neat. Though I do wish I also had the white variant to also show, kind of like the Flame on Johnny Storm. So yeah. Now we got Black Cat, aka one of the biggest pain in the asses to try and pose when it came to doing it up there. doing it up on one of my posing things because because of these high heels, that can be a bit of a pain. I mean, yeah, it's like the only Black Cat figure I have, and I could find at the current moment, so I was like, might as well grab it from the place I was, so yeah. Though, also, I should note that that I do find the Gamerverse selection figures from this wave to be pretty baffling. Like, a couple Spider-Man suits, like, yeah, but, like, two of them are, like, yeah, two of them are recolors, one of which doesn't even make sense, being the Anti-Venom one. Like, what? Like, Anti-Venom white-blue one, which I am still baffled about, like, right now. Like, just give us the normal white and black Anti-Venom suit. And also, like, the lack of villains, like, one of the more obvious ones being Kraven. Like, he was, like, the main antagonist for, like, the first half of the game. And the only two villains we have in the Gamerverse line was Black Cat and Venom. Black Cat, in which only really appears in, like, one mission before she just fucks off to Paris. So, yeah. Kind of a weird selection choice. Also, considering how samey she is from the first to the second game in terms of looks, she honestly could have just appeared in the first line, honestly, and nobody would have, given too much of a crap about that. So yeah, kind of a baffling choice, especially when there's other options like Lizard, Kraven, Scream, and the like. Also, I forgot to bring Scorpion into the group shop of all the other Spider-Man villains. I just forgot he was on my shelf a little earlier, and yeah. So, yeah, this is pretty much a perfect translation from the 90s animated series into action figure form. They even gave him a bendy wire tail, which is something that should always be on things like this, really, but for some reason when it comes to, like, these things and also capes, they never think of the bendy wire option for posability, which just gets annoying, especially when it comes to some figures. Anyways, it's pretty good, even if the design is a bit basic. So I only wish that they, one, had an alternate head and some extra hand skulls, but yeah, pretty good fig. Pretty good, yeah. And of course, we also have Herman Schultz the Shocker, because of course, obviously I have to have him so that you can reenact the whole symbiote Spider-Man chasing Shocker scene from the animated series. Shocker! Yeah. He also comes with a couple accessories, such as an extra pair of gauntlets with fist, like, gripping. Yeah, these are the gripper things, and these are like the fists, which, oddly enough, have this whole thing where you pop it like this, like the stud thing, and then you pop it in, which is definitely something, but yeah. Honestly, pretty neat fig, especially with these hand joints, Cool stuff. Now we've got Hobie Brown's The Prowler. I currently don't have a Jefferson Davis one as of now, so I'm just sticking with Hobie for the moment. And yeah, honestly, seeing this figure kind of makes me a little bummed out that we don't see his version of the Prowler, like, more often nowadays, since he's pretty much been replaced by his more modern counterpart, Aaron Davis, ever since the Spider-Verse movies. Yeah, like, dude only has, like, 2 TV show adaptations and, like, 1 video game adaptation as Hobie Brown, in freaking Friend or Foe, Spider-Man the Animated Series, and Spider-Man 2017 show of all things, which is kind of weird since Miles is in that show, so you'd think they'd use the Aaron Davis Prowler, but apparently not. Yeah, that should have made a lot of questionable decisions. But anyways, I'm glad to have him in action figure form, even though, yeah, like, this is a bit more rubbery, so it's at least a little bit more bearable than just flat out plastic, but still, you know? Anyways, it's also cool that we both get a head sculpt for him, as well as some fist hands, especially since he only appears for one episode of the animated series, so you'd think they probably wouldn't care too much to give him those, but hey, I appreciate it nonetheless. So, yeah, glad to have him in my collection. Almost at the finish line with this video, and now we are at my second favorite Spider-Man villain, Electro, which I've just got to say, the one from No Way Home, they pretty much captured him pretty much perfectly, except for the fact that they don't have have him be able to, have a head sculpt that pops, that doesn't have the lightning bolt thing. Though, I really do love him with the lightning bolt head on anyways, so it's not like that big of an issue, but still. Especially if you were to take this off, you're gonna be seeing a big hole, as some people have figured out the hard way, which is kind of funny. But anyways, so yeah. I do wish he came more with accessories-wise, because he only came with these two yellow electric pieces, which, funnily enough, I kept seeing the Francine Fry Electro figure over places like GameStop and Walmart for some reason, and it also came with those blue, with those things, but blue for some reason, you know. But I waited until I could get my boy Max Dillon instead. You know, even if it's not like the comic version, which I'm cool with for this film one, since we got the OG Max Dillon, and he's from the same one as the Amazing Spider-Man 2, just, you know, that one had a completely different design, more based on the Ultimate Universe. So, yeah. And we all know how much renting for Gaines did not like TASM 2, because Electro is black in that. Yeah. So, yeah. Pretty cool fig. Though I do wish I knew how the heck I use these electric things when gripping them to his hands. Like, yeah, they can be kind of a pain to deal with, though. Alright, now we're at my final Marvel Legends villain fig, and the final fig that I have in my collection, aka Doc Ock, which is a really cool one, although I am not a big fan of, like, the tentacles here. I do really want to get, like, that. This is my only flaw, like, how unposable the tentacles are. Like, I do wish to do get do one of those figure mods that do the bendy wire tentacles at some point, though I'm not going to be doing that today or in this video. So, yeah. I mean, this is a pretty accurate figure. I just wish that the things were more posable. As for the figure of it in of itself, it's fine, really. I think it's pretty good. Good for what it is. You know, just need some improvement on the tentacle front, and we'd be pretty golden. So, yeah. And with that, we end this chapter in my figure collecting journey. Also, I would just like to point out that I finally got the US Agent and Sentry duo pack for Marvel Legends as well. So that's also cool. This is like the very last figures I've currently gotten, like the latest ones I have. So yeah, really, really cool. As for Sentry over here, I really like how they did him over here, even if he's not nearly as built as, say, like what his Comic Con part is, but that's not as big a deal, you know. It's live action, so yeah. And also
Also, it's another one of those more rubbery plastic capes, which, you know. No. So, yeah. It is cool that I, at least now, have this and the Sentry figure in my collection, since I have been wanting him for quite a bit, you know? Anyways, and also for US Agent, there's also not much I'll be saying right now. Though it is pretty cool that he has this kind of shield attachment, which is kind of, though it is kind of weird that they didn't do the same for the Infinity War Captain America shield. Yet I was able to find this kind of thing for this and the Marvel vs. Capcom one, so yeah. Anyways. Phew! Finally, we're done with this figure showcase thing, saga, whatever the jig. Here's all my figures that I have currently in one big group shot because one of my associates was really wanting that. And now, here it is, the big group shot thing that I'll also be using for my name channel banner thing. Thanks for watching this massive showcase here, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all on the flip side. Later.